반갑습니다. I'm smiling out there for certain people that say I don't smile enough in my videos, so now I'm working on that. I wanted to take a few minutes to answer some questions that people had for me with some of the other videos that I've done, and also from my blog. I get some questions from there too. I think they're pretty helpful. The first question has to do with a very sensitive topic that I think everyone has probably heard of before. I just thought I'd touch on it, give my 2 cents. Racism in South Korea. I would probably look at it more like ethnic biases. Racism is kind of a hard word, but Korea is very homogenous. Everybody here is Korean. It's not like being, say, from America or maybe the UK or something like that, where there's a lot of, at least in the big cities, where there's a lot of cultural diversity these days. Coming here to Korea, if you're, first of all, you're going to be a foreigner. You're not from Korea, so the way we do things, the way we say things, what is funny to us, what is not funny to us, everything's going to be, everything's going to run the risk of being different. But on top of that, if you're white or if you're black or Spanish or a non-Korean Asian or somebody who's mixed Korean ethnicity like myself, I think everybody runs the risk of having some biases thrown at them. Korea is a funny society. They're very blunt about certain things. They're very blunt in general. I think that's one of the things that surprises people when they come here. You know, they'll just come right up to you and ask, how old are you? Are you married? What is your blood type? Those are kind of not common questions that we ask in social settings, at least in America. But here they're very common, and they're pretty much the 3 biggies. So in general, they're more blunt. So maybe a little bit of sensitivity from the foreigner perspective can be put into understanding that, look, they're just being blunt. Maybe they're not being negative or cutting in any way when talking to you about being a foreigner or about your ethnic background. That being said, we've all seen and heard of instances where it is pretty blatant, it is maybe ill-intentioned, but no matter where you go in this world, you're going to get it. It doesn't matter if you're in the Middle East or if you're in Asia or India or Russia or America or whatever. There's always going to be different ethnic groups, and those groups are, there's going to be times when they're at each other's throats, throwing comments at each other or doing whatever. That being said, also, I don't think it's nearly as bad as it is in America. I think just because we are so culturally diverse, which is a good thing, but it also has its negative side to it as well. You know, the day-to-day things that that people have to endure. Those things just aren't here. Other than comments and maybe that type of thing, it's not quite as violent and volatile as it is, at least in America, that I can speak for, that what I've seen with my own eyes. It's never going to affect your ability to be a good teacher or anything like that. In fact, I would just look at it as an opportunity to prove them wrong, an opportunity to silence them if they are ill-intentioned. But look, it's no different. Usually those types of things come from people that are kind of miserable in life, or they've got some deep-seated issues, so you got to take it with a grain of salt. Second question, prescription medications in Korea. Most of the drugs that are out there, prescription drugs, are going to be here in Korea. They're just going to go by different names. So what I would recommend doing is either bring a prescription. If you can bring a prescription written in Korean, that would be key. But bring a prescription that has neatly written, not like in normal doctor writing, but neatly written the active ingredient and maybe the brand name as well. That might help too, but at least the active ingredient for your medication. If you can't get that, then bring your medication itself, the tube or the bottle or whatever, something that can be translated into their equivalent here. But I would just say, and always have someone there that speaks Korean just to make sure that nothing is lost in translation. So, because in places like Busan, most places, most doctors' offices, they don't speak English. So keep that in mind. Third one, are there any women in Judo? I practice Judo, martial arts, and is Judo expensive? First one, there are women in Judo. Korea is very competitive in the sport of Judo, and they have some very competitive women. North Korea actually won a gold medal at the Olympics. Is it expensive? It depends on your definition of expensive. The school that I attend is about $70, less than $70 a month. That's pretty cheap. That's actually very cheap compared to back home, unless you're going to a small club or something like that. But it ranges between $70 and $100. Some other options for martial arts here would be kendo, which is like the sword fighting with all the big cool armor on, which is in Korea it's called kumdo or kumdo. It's exactly the exact same art, just the naming conventions are different. Hapkido, which is like a cross between Aikido and Taekwondo and some Judo, kind of all mixed into one. Obviously Taekwondo, Judo, and now there's a growing trend here for mixed martial arts. So whatever is your fancy, it's definitely all here, and martial arts community is very active here in Korea. What is the typhoon season like in Korea? Is it anything compared to hurricane season in the U.S.? Well, essentially, a typhoon is a hurricane. It's a huge storm that builds strength off of the water, and then when it hits land, it loses strength. It's very much like a hurricane with massive winds, like 150, 200 miles an hour or something like that, until it's on land and then it dissipates. But typhoon season is right around the middle of the summer to the end of the summer. So we're kind of at the tail end of typhoon season now. It's August 25th. And it rains a lot. And when it rains pretty hard. And then every once in a while we get hit with a typhoon. Actually, we're supposed to get hit with a typhoon on Monday or Tuesday. So if you never see another video from me again, that means that the typhoon was very strong. But how long does the CRC take, the criminal record check? Well, your recruiters and Epic and all of them will tell you that it takes anywhere between or up to 12 weeks. In most cases, it takes, I think, between, say, 4 to 6 weeks. In my case, when I applied for it, it took 12 weeks, and I still had to have it sent off to the state to get apostille. But then I had decided not to come to Korea at that time. I was at the tail end of the process, so I waited. So I had to reapply again, and again it took 12 weeks. So you just never know. All I would say is assume that it's going to take at least 12 weeks, and so just plan your documentation and when you're trying to get over here around that fact. And if it comes earlier, which it likely will, then you're good to go. You'll have more than enough time to have it apostilled. And sending it to the state to get apostille, which is like a state-level notary, the equivalent of that. It's a piece of paper that comes with it. That could take up to 2 weeks as well, just because of the mail and shuffling through paperwork when it gets to the state. It's a government agency, so you just never know how long it's going to take. So all in all, to get it apostilled, start to finish, give yourself 12 to 14 weeks, but it'll probably take less. And that's it. If you have any other questions, feel free to let me know, and I'd be glad to answer them. But otherwise, thanks for watching. Smile.